It is so good to be with you all. I was reflecting on that sort of I've had a 50,000-foot view of as this community has developed over time, watching Dave and all of you come together. And I just thought I'd share a little story because, as most of you know, Clayton Christensen passed away in January of 2020. But I was reflecting on it, listening to Dave up here before about his book, that when you started your career at Kleiner Perkins in 1997 was the year that The Innovator's Dilemma came out, was 1997. And Clay started a class at the Harvard Business School called Building and Sustaining a Successful Enterprise. It was not called Disruptive Innovation, which everyone knows him for and thinks about, but it was called Building and Sustaining a Successful Enterprise. And the biggest criticism that Clay would get year over year about the course was, these principles are great for building a company, an organization that will really stand the test of time and last into perpetuity and make a difference. And as Clay liked to say, his mission was to put venture capital out of business. But you're not taking into account time, that individuals want to exit and that they have time clocks and that they're going to want to do things. And Clay just kept saying, I think you guys are missing the big picture. And the really cool thing is that as I look at this community, you all are proving that he was right, that this is the big picture. So I just thank all of you for what you do first before I get started here. So thank you. When we turned to write this book, Job Moves, 9 Steps for Making Progress in Your Career, it was around helping individuals make progress in their careers and lives. And it's true that the first 3 quarters of the book are for individuals, but the last quarter was about what do organizations and managers and mentors do to help individuals make progress. And from my perspective, what we really wanted to create was a book that would have impact to help both sides of the equation make a lot more progress together, to stop the churn that we see right now and the discontent that's ravaging much of the economy and companies and so forth, with people searching for something deeper and more. And ultimately, this is about creating a win-win. And what I hope you'll hear today in the talk is sort of the ethos behind that, and how I hope you can harness the insights that we found around the root causes that actually cause people to say, today's the day I'm going to switch jobs. How do you harness that energy to actually create the places that you all are creating? Evergreen companies with communities in touch with the people that serve them, that really grow together and make progress together. And I just think that you all have things at your root that are unlike anything else right now, that can really put the needs of the people first so that you can get progress as well for your companies. And so that's, as I drive into this, I want to talk about it, but it's plainly not the world in which we're living right now. The Great Resignation highlighted the churn, obviously, in the economy, with 100 million people resigning over the course of 2 years. But the really interesting stat wasn't 100 million people resigning. It was that 80% of those people who left their jobs regretted the move within 6 months. 80%. They moved and they didn't feel good about it. And it masks the fact that quitting continues in our economy. Across the world, nearly 1 billion people switch jobs worldwide every year. In the United States, people switch jobs every 4.1 years on average. They don't necessarily switch companies. We're going to come back to that in a moment. But there's a lot of switching, but there's also a lot of discontent. We know that 2/3 of people have quietly quit or disengaged from their jobs. We know half right now are actively seeking a new job. This isn't a model of contentment, progress, engagement, and moving forward together. So the question is, how do we reverse that? And one of our conclusions is that fundamentally what companies have been offering employees is a mismatch for what they're really trying to achieve in their careers and lives. Companies have been putting out progression, as an example. The career ladder, come in as an entry-level employee, work your way up to manager, director, on and on and on. Follow these steps up. But individuals are seeking progress. And according to our data, while just under 25% of individuals, their definition of progress lines up with this career ladder and progression. For the vast majority of people, progress looks a lot more like this terrain. It winds around, it ticks and tacks, it sweeps through different landscapes as their careers and lives intersect in ways that cause them to prioritize different things at different points in time. And according to our research, over 75% of people, when they're switching, the context is such that it looks more like this and doesn't match on to what companies have been offering people. Now, to be clear, we've known that people have mattered. McKinsey authored the famous report, The War for Talent, in 1998. They gave us a set of recipes for how to develop and retain top talent. But all of it was largely grounded on that roughly quarter of people whose definition of progress matches the career ladder. Now, it's been updated by different people more and more recently to say, okay, there's different reasons people switch jobs. In a world where they can all of a sudden work hybrid or remote or all sorts of things, work-life balance, et cetera, there's different factors going into it. We have to think of people's work lives as integrated with their personal lives, but they haven't understood the root causes of what's driving people in their career. So that's the question we sought out to ask. What are the root causes for why people switch jobs? And to do that, we assembled a trio of us. Ethan Bernstein, who's a professor at the Harvard Business School and thought of deeply for his work in talent and workplaces and holacracy and movements like that. You know me, focused on upskilling and education. And our third co-author, Bob Mesta, of Jobs to be Done fame. How many people have heard of the Jobs to be Done theory, Clay Christensen? Okay, a handful of you. So we'll do a little very high-level primer on it. But Bob's the creator of that theory with Clay Christensen. And it's allowed him to help collaborate with a number of companies and entrepreneurs over the years to build literally over 3,500 successful products and services in industries ranging from missile defense to consumer packaged goods to healthcare to education, and you name it, okay? And so all three of us were disciples, if you will, of Clay Christensen. Ethan was a doctoral student of Clay's. I wrote and co-founded the Christensen Institute with Clay, and Bob developed this theory with Clay. And when the three of us combined, we took this job to be done insight to try to apply it to careers. Let me give you the quick primer first here, and then we'll try to apply it. But the basic idea is that a job to be done is the progress that someone seeks in a struggling circumstance. So it's what are they trying to achieve, and what's the context in which they're trying to achieve it to help understand what is a good solution for that individual or something that maybe falls short. And what we're really interested in is causality. Not correlation or personas or, gee, white males age 40 to 50, with kids tend to do this. We want to really understand what are the set of dominoes that tip in a certain way to cause them to take the action that they do. And so we look deeply at individual cases to build out the set of jobs to be done. And what the fundamental insight that many people remember is this, that people don't buy products for their own sake. They hire them to do a job in their lives and make progress. Some of you may know or remember the famous marketing professor at Harvard, Theodore Levitt, who used to say, people don't buy quarter-inch drills, they just want quarter-inch holes, right? The product is a conduit to the outcome, but the context matters there as well. I like to joke that when I'm pulling Ethernet cable through the back of my office in a closet, my wife, even though she thinks she sees everything, doesn't know when I punch a hole through the drywall to pull that cable through, because it doesn't matter if it's messy and imprecise and so forth. But when we're hanging something on the dining room wall, you better believe the tool matters because it's got to be precise, clean, and so forth. People are going to look at it. And so context helps give meaning around what's really valuable. And then we have to understand what's the struggle that you're working through and what progress looks like for that individual. And in 2009, Ethan and Bob started collaborating with each other, and they brought me in a few years later, and they realized that employees are not just hired by companies, that just like we hire products to help us make progress in our lives, individuals hire companies to help them make progress in their lives as well. They have agency in that decision. You as an individual get to decide where you work, what you'll accept for it, and so forth. And that's a choice that you're hiring them just as much as they're hiring you. There's a compact there that I think we forgot somewhere along the way. Perhaps not in this room, but across much of society. And so, to be clear, individuals themselves don't often know that they have these jobs to be done, that they don't understand that they get to hire their next job, right? When you ask them, how did you get your last job, they'll say all sorts of things. Cross my fingers and hope something would work out. Russian roulette, it was the numbers game, like rolled the dice and applied to tons of jobs online because something was bound to work out eventually, right? Just sent out all those applications. Now, frankly, AI is doing it for me. And eventually it was going to work out. But our research shows, and we studied literally over 1,000 individuals who had switched jobs, so had made the switch, that they're giving luck too much a part in their play. And that instead, it's not as random as they think. There are a series of dominoes that fall one after another that cause them to make the switch that they do. Now, that allowed us to create a 9-step process that we use in the book to help people make better choices. But what I really want to focus on is this slide, which is the timeline that people go through when they make a switch. Almost always, they start with this first thought that, gee, something's uncomfortable. It's not working for me the way it used to. Or they talk to someone else who says, gee, look what I got to do yesterday. Or they see it on Instagram influencer, I suppose, or something like that. There's a first thought that something could be better. And you go into passive looking. All of a sudden, you start noticing people who have new jobs or people who are doing something that you thought, gee, I might want to try that out at some point in my life. And then typically there's an event that happens, and it sends people into active looking. You have a big argument with your boss, you feel like you weren't heard in the room, you feel micromanaged, companies has a down report, whatever it might be, and it sends you into active looking, where you're actually brushing up your resume, starting to have informational interviews, actively looking at jobs, and so forth. And then there's a second event that pushes you into deciding mode. It creates a time wall. I've got to make the choice or the decision by this point in time. And then you hire that next job, you make the switch, and then you start to quote unquote consume it, right? As you actually do the job and you decide relative to the reasons that you came, is this something I'm really happy with? Again, we know from the folks in the Great Resignation that overwhelmingly they were not happy. Actually, we asked this question of alums in the Harvard Business School the last 3 years. 75% of people say that they know that they were in the wrong job within a year of coming, 30% within a month. So this is like not as uncommon as I think we wish it were. People making bad choices, but it follows this timeline consistently. And so what we did is we reconstructed this timeline with the over 1,000 individuals we studied to figure out what were the dominoes pushing them along that timeline. The dominoes were one of two sets of forces. There's the push of the situation. Things when they're not good enough, when something's saying, gosh, this isn't working for me right now for any number of reasons, and we'll talk about it in a moment. And then there's the pull of a new job that sort of brings you forward into what you could do next. And never does someone change behavior for just one reason, especially when it comes to something so big as changing jobs. It's a series of pushes and pulls, typically 3 to 5 pushes, anywhere from 2 to 5 pulls, that together cause them to make the switch only once they overcome these forces in blue at the bottom. So the habit of the present, which are things like, yeah, I know it might be better there, but I can just sort of keep on going, right? Bob likes to say, bitchin' ain't switching. I'm going to complain, but I'm going to stay here. It's like the American pastime, right? And then there is the anxiety of the new solution, right? I could end up there, but what if they find out that I don't really have the skill set that I think I do? Or what if they find out that, oh, geez, like I'm actually more micromanaged there, or whatever it is, right? And it's only when the pushes and pulls overwhelm these anxieties and habits that a switch actually happens and someone changes jobs. And so what we did was categorize these pushes and pulls across the 1,000+ job switchers and came up with a set of 14 pushes and 16 pulls. It's actually, when you think about it, it sounds like a lot, but across 1,000+ individuals, it's actually not that many. And so these are examples of the pushes. I'm not going to read through all of them. Things like when I don't respect or trust the people I'm working with, when I feel like the work I'm doing has little or no impact on the outside world, my community, whatever it might be, when the way I'm managed day to day is wearing me down, things like that. Those are pushes that cause you to say, this isn't really working for me. You will notice, by the way, money is not on that list. And that's because money is a surface level thing, but it's not the underlying why. Money stands in around respect, or I have people that I need to provide for and responsibilities or things like that, but it's not actually the causal mechanism itself. And then these are the pulls, 16 of them, right? So I can spend more time with others outside of work. I think we tend to forget that people don't just switch jobs or take a job because of something within their career. It's integrated to their whole life. And so these are the sets of pulls that cause them to move forward. And what we then did was essentially create some clusters, just to simplify these, in what we call 4 quests for progress, or 4 jobs to be done for why people switch. And the first one is what we call get out. So these are people that basically don't see a way forward in their current job, and they just, like, these people are just itching. They need to get out. They're the leap before they look folks, right? And yeah, they want to be someplace where they can be supported or challenged, but this is much more about leaving and all the things that are wrong than what they're moving toward. The second one we called regain control. These are people who feel like overwhelmed with how their time and energy is being used, but they actually like what they're doing in large measure. So they want to regain control about how their time and energy is being used. That could be micromanagement, that could be how they do their work, it could be work-life balance, any number of things. The third one was sort of the opposite of that, in that they actually liked how their time and energy was being used, but they felt fundamentally disrespected around how their skill set was being deployed. They didn't recognize my experience, the knowledge, the credentials that I bring into the role, or I'm becoming known for things that I don't want to be known for. And then the fourth one was the closest one to that career ladder progression folks. These are the take the next steppers. They reach a career or personal milestone and they're ready to take that next step, take on more responsibility and so forth, okay? And what I will tell you is you all can explore this later on your own time if you want to grab this. For those that come into the breakout later, we will go deeper on this. But we've created a free assessment at jobmoves.com where you can explore how these forces work on you in a past job switch. Frankly, Bob actually used it recently in his own life, not because he was looking to change jobs, but because he was feeling off, and he was trying to figure out where the misalignment was coming from, and it helped him be like, wow, I just need to let some team members do these things and start shuffling over here, and I don't even have to switch. We'll come back to that notion in a moment. But essentially what you'll see when you do it is no one fits perfectly in any one of these quests. They're more like poles on a map where you move more or less toward one or the other, which helps you understand sort of the forces acting on you at any given point in time. And the way to think about it, right, is that because each of these quests are made up of many pushes and pulls, no one fits perfectly, or almost no one fits perfectly, into any one. But you also probably will identify with all of these over the course of your career at different junctures, okay? And this is all well and good for the individuals, but what I really want to talk about is how you all can use this to retain top talent and be places that are not just evergreen in company, but have an evergreen feel in terms of the individuals themselves. That you're building something to last in the people. Because we know that unplanned turnover is costly. I don't need to go over those statistics. You all know that. And the reality, I think, is that evergreen companies have an unfair advantage, if you will, than anyone else. Because you can see that big picture over the long term. You know the value. Like, yes, there's unplanned turnover in terms of cost and finding someone new, but you all know how much it costs in terms of the relationships that it disrupts, how it impacts culture, how long it takes people to understand the tribal knowledge of how a place really works, the ripple effects into the community in which you work and so forth, and how important it is to retain people. There's the line that my friend Mark Ramos, the former chief learning officer at Cornerstone, said, which is, some organizations say, well, I don't want to train them because they're going to leave anyway. Well, what happens if you don't train them and they stay? Or as Richard Branson said, train people well enough so maybe they won't leave. Maybe they'll actually want to stay here and continue to engage. And so that's the real question, right? How do you create a place that people don't want to just hire that job on day one, but they want to rehire each and every single day? And my contention is that if you can understand the forces of progress that are acting on them, that we just talked through, that you could actually build workplaces that will cause them to not want to leave, because they will see places to grow in your organization, either in their existing role or within other roles inside the company. I'll tell you something that we didn't put in the book, but Dave made me realize we should have, which was after we studied these 1,000+ job switchers, we started coaching individuals after individuals, cohorts, helping them in their career to build the process. 53% of the people we coached did not change jobs. And the reason was we helped them reframe to their manager what they were trying to accomplish and how they could best contribute in ways that made sense to the business as well. And we helped them realize that the grass isn't greener on the other side. That the trade-offs you would have to make over there are actually bigger than the trade-offs you're making over here to get what you really want. And so there are ways forward to go and grow in your current role. We'll talk more about that in the breakout for sure. But you all have heard of exit interviews when someone's leaving a company. With all due respect to exit interviews, they're important. They're a little too late because the person sort of left. And they're kind of lying to you when they tell you why they're leaving. And so our big recommendation is do an entrance interview. Why are you coming here? Use our assessment to figure out what are the forces that acted on them to come here. Figure out what are those pushes and pulls that cause them to hire us, and then check in frequently with them to make sure you're a workplace that they are rehiring each and every single day. Understand where their growth goals are, because maybe there are things like job descriptions. We have this shadow job description up here. The only thing I will say for a moment is job descriptions are fake in the sense that we create them. We can also make them malleable to fit superstar talent that we really want to keep inside of our company for any number of reasons. I'm not telling you to do something against your self-interest, but I am telling you to understand what your people want and figure out where the sweet spot is for both of you so that you can move forward together. And I'm confident that with your time horizons, you all can do this better than anyone else. I want to just tell you one story just to wrap up here, which is a guy named Joe Carver who works at a Navy shipyard in Puget Sound in Washington. And he started using this process. And one of the things that a lot of HR people were telling us is like, your book, Michael, doesn't actually have as many big insights as you think it does, but we just wish that the managers would freaking start doing this. And so Joe said, we started building it into the processes so managers didn't have to think about it. It just became the way we operated. And we started to have conversations with each individual on the way in about why were they here. And then every month or two, we checked in. How are we doing against those things? Are we causing you to go someplace that isn't right for you? But we did something else. We also started talking about it as teams, because we didn't want to make individuals feel like they were off on their island having a conversation with me about why'd you come here and feel like the problem child. We wanted to normalize it within the company so that they could see this is how we operate. This is what we are trying to do as an organization, is understand what progress looks like for each and every single one of you. And this is what progress looks like for us on the Navy shipyard so that we can move forward together. Morale improved, he said, on the shipyard. People stayed much longer. And when they were ready to actually exit a job, he could figure out, is there another role for them here? Or how can I help them? Because guess what? They often boomeranged back in, and they created lifelong connections and community is what his contention is. I'm pretty sure that's what you all can do every single day with the individuals that you work with. I'm pretty sure it's already what you do in many cases with your teams. And how do you build that ethos throughout is by understanding what progress looks like for the individuals and creating great places that last a long, long, long time that people want to rehire each and every single day. Thank you so much for this opportunity and look forward to more.